congratulations on winning your competition in South Carolina. That's outstanding. And again, what we've been trying to share with all of the young people that we've seen today, we are thrilled that you pushed through with this to try and do this competition. Frankly, we would have been unhappy if it hadn't taken place, and this is the chance for you to showcase what you know on a national scale. So glad you got to do that. My name's Lindsey Draper. I retired from the juvenile court bench here in Milwaukee County, Wisconsin. Now, I guess the biggest thing is I'm a member of the National Task Force on Lawyer Wellbeing.
And my name is Trey Delap, and I am an alum of the We the People program. I participated at my senior year of high school, so I can attest to the awesomeness, and I am really, really grateful that you guys were able to persevere and get through this. I have a couple day jobs. I have a small lobbying firm, and I am from Nevada, and I also am the executive director of the Nevada Center for Civic Engagement, which is the current new home for We the People in Nevada. So I'm really excited to see what you got today.
So good afternoon, South Carolina. I'm also thrilled that you were willing to persevere in spite of all the obstacles. My name is Lynn Uzzell, and I teach American politics here at the University of Virginia, which means that I am on the same time zone that you are.
Could you introduce yourselves and your teacher, please?
Hello, my name is Jasmine Lara, and my teacher is Robert DeSerbo.
Hi, my name is Hannah Ferguson, and my teacher is also Robert DeSerbo.
And my name is Anna Caroline Phillips. Mr. DeSerbo is my teacher as well.
Who just showed up there at the bottom. Good. Well, we're going to do Unit 2's first question. The states sent delegates to the Philadelphia Convention to join with other states in devising and discussing all such alterations and further provisions as may be necessary to render the federal Constitution adequate to the exigencies of the Union. To what extent, if any, did the delegates follow their instructions? What experiences of state governments under their new constitutions after independence might have influenced the creation of the Constitution? Do the decisions of the U.S. Supreme Court function as a continuing constitutional convention? Why or why not? Begin.
The delegates did not follow their guidelines at all. They overthrew the government and wrote the United States Constitution. Each state had its own agenda, but the congressional call for a convention was for the sole and express purpose of revising the Articles of Confederation. Treason to the Articles of Confederation may be too hard of a statement or claim, but their actions in Philadelphia were certainly not legal.
Radical members of the political elite, such as Alexander Hamilton, were calling for a stronger national government and insisting that the sovereign states were not fit to govern the country. There's only one remedy, he said, to call a convention of all the states and to prepare the people for change. James Madison, however, had given thought to the possibility of scrapping the articles. He had a strong conviction that no amount of patching could remedy the defective Articles of Confederation.
State governments and their constitutions played a pivotal role in influencing the creation of the Constitution. First, the Pennsylvania Constitution expanded who was considered a political person, abolished property requirements for voting and holding office, and became a unicameral government. John Adams described the Pennsylvania Constitution. It is so democratical that it must produce confusion and every evil work. Pennsylvania guaranteed rights such as freedom from arrest, trial by juries of one's peers, the right against taxation without representation, and the first to guarantee freedom of conscience.
The Massachusetts state constitution, in regard to voting, had its citizens vote for different levels of the government based on how much land they owned. Maryland's voters would cast their ballots by voice, leaving them open to political pressures and retribution. The Virginia Declaration emphasized that the people have an inalienable right to alter or abolish a government that does not serve them.
However, states like South Carolina withheld the right to vote to only white men who owned a significant amount of land. The Massachusetts state constitution relied on popular representation in the legislature, and it gave the government checks on the power of the legislature. He elected from a free and popular election and provided a judiciary with judges holding office according to their good behavior in not limited terms. John Locke's natural rights and classical republicanism was seen in the Massachusetts Constitution. Massachusetts had a special convention in 1780. This idea of a special convention of the people to decide important constitutional issues was part of a new way of thinking about popular rule and would play a central role in the ratification of the Constitution.
The decisions of the U.S. Supreme Court does function as a continuing constitutional convention. Each state can bring a suit against a particular issue for the court to review. This will reflect how each state sent a delegate to the convention to bring issues before it. When a case is presented to them, because they have different ideologies on law, they must collaborate, discuss, and compromise to some extent to gain majority vote. This action was seen with delegates for issues such as the Great Compromise and the Three-Fifths Compromise. In addition, because we have only passed 17 amendments in the past 227 years, our Supreme Court president is looked as a type of amendment today.
For example, in the court cases of Roe v. Wade, Obergefell v. Hodges, District of Columbia v. Heller, and Riley v. California, all have set nationwide precedents that seem to be as strong as amendments. Our Supreme Court today reflects Thomas Jefferson's advice in which the founders did not follow. He wrote that we should provide in our Constitution for its revision at stated periods. Each generation should have the solemn opportunity to update their Constitution every 19 or 20 years, thus allowing it to be handed on with periodical repairs from generation to the end of time.
Thank you. So you started with a very strong statement. These guys overthrew the government. They staged a coup. Does that mean what they did was illegitimate? That, you know, the passage of time has kept us going, but it really was wrong from the beginning. Is that what you're saying?
No, I don't believe it was wrong. As we can see with John Locke's right to rebellion, as Aristotle once quoted, if there's arguments over justice, that rebellion should be held to guarantee your rights as a human. So I believe that the founders felt it was a great idea for them to just go ahead and make a brand new constitution to guarantee their brand new rights.
So considering that the articles said you don't do this amendment without everybody agreeing to it, and Rhode Island said, we're not going to agree, so we're not going to even bother to show up, would that change your answer?
I actually disagree with my partner and say that it was wrong. And it really didn't include any of the people's opinions. They had a secrecy rule that they could not tell anybody outside of that convention. So it was wrong from the beginning. The people never even got a say in what their rights were supposed to be in the Bill of Rights or in the articles. So, I mean, it was wrong from the beginning and it's wrong now. We should hold another constitutional convention for the people to also be able to look at it and say, this is what we want to change and this is what we want to add, that shows what our rights are and what they aren't.
We'll chat later. Thank you.
I really appreciated the Jefferson quote, and really what he's getting at is the perpetual nature of the Constitution, that it can't be forced upon a new generation. As young people inheriting this Constitution, do you feel that you have an adequate say in its foundational principles and how it impacts your life?
I don't believe we have that much say in our current constitution right now, because if we look at other countries like Ireland, they held a constitutional convention in 2012 where registered voters were able to vote on amendments to be added to the Constitution, one being gay marriage, so they were able to vote on important issues related to them and also changing the voting age. Well, here in America, we really can't bring up new amendments to our Constitution that way.
I agree with my partner. I believe that we are not adequately represented at all. Jefferson's statement, he's suggesting that each generation, about roughly 19 or 20 years, should have some sort of convention to amend and propose new legislation to fit the needs of our society today. And if you look at our class, we're 18 years old. We are living in the technology age, and there's not a single piece of legislation or an amendment in the Constitution that has anything to do with technology whatsoever. So I think examples like that just show that the people's needs of today and society today are not represented at all in the Constitution.
To agree with my partners, they only thought this Constitution would last at most 50 years. So the fact that it has lasted this long just proves that they weren't ready for what changes were going to come ahead. They, like Anna said, they didn't know about technology, and they didn't even know about their privacy rights today involving technology. For example, in New Jersey, they are thinking about using drones to go over people's backyards to make sure they're social distancing. And there's nothing in the Constitution that states anything about your right to privacy with that or anything with technology. So I believe we don't really have a say in what is passed. Even if we were to propose a new amendment, we would have to we'd have to get not only Congress, but we'd also have to get the states to pass it as well. So I believe that if we do hold another constitutional convention, that the people should be able to have a say in what amendments there are, because the amendments don't only apply to the legislator and the leaders of the states, they apply to the United States as a whole.
Okay,
And
let me ask you another question. You said that the Supreme Court acts as a continuing constitutional convention, and that's a good thing because it instantiates Jefferson's principle of changing the Constitution. But Jefferson said that the people ought to have the right to change their own constitution. But when the judges do it, it is 9 unelected people speaking for the rest of the country. Does that not raise a legitimacy question when they alter the Constitution?
in the Supreme Court, I do believe there is a partisan issue. According to a Pew Research article, the partisan gap is 26% right now, which is the widest the gap has ever been, with 75% of Republicans in favor of Supreme Court, while 49% of Democrats in favor of Supreme Court. So there is a partisan issue. And we can also look as an example when Justice Scalia passed away, how the Senate Republicans kept the seat open for over 300 days because they wanted the next president to choose the new Supreme Court justice, which ended up being Brett Kavanaugh instead of Obama choosing the new Supreme Court justice.
If the Constitution has lasted as long as it has, does that not speak to how well it was written as opposed to it needs to be updated?
It does speak to how well it was written, but like I said, they didn't have any idea about how we would develop now. And especially besides privacy and technology, we can look at the Second Amendment and look at gun rights and how it's such a huge issue. And we can also look at things such as abortion.
Okay, thank you. All right. So let me tell you, and I think one of the points that we have made throughout the last couple of days is that when a team leaves you wanting to talk some more and have a bunch of other questions, they've triggered ideas, they've triggered our interest, and that's a darn good thing. And I have a lot I want to talk to you about. Let me tender a couple of ideas so that you all get to go away and I don't spend the rest of your lives talking. I want us all to think very carefully about another constitutional convention. Every time I see that we're inching closer, I go, oh my God, because I worry we may have in mind that they will talk about a balanced budget. Or we may have in mind they'll talk, but see, once you get the Constitutional Convention, they can talk. They can do like these guys did who overthrew the government in your way. They can talk about anything they want, and I'm not really sure I want the popular ideas of the day being what people talk about in deciding where we go. But that's me, and I'm old. You all did a good job. I enjoyed listening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to sustain the comments of my esteemed colleague, both in this was inspiring and interesting and terrifying, the idea of a new constitutional convention. And it's very simple. The question you asked here, when you said treason is what these delegates committed, you're saying, I mean, that's a strong statement. So if we had the 2021 coronavirus new constitutional convention, Katie bar the door. I mean, who knows what could happen? And that, you know, from a little perspective I'll give you from as a lobbyist, when the legislature's in session, you got to watch those people because who knows what they're going to come up with. So the point is really strong that we could have a wholesale new government, and that is how important the Constitution is, and that's how deep this question goes. And you know, a couple things that came up in my noodle head while we were talking is I really was impressed by your presentation, and because it does keep us wanting more to talk a little bit more, and you really did handle all the questions really well. I think we could have long discussions, and you know, things that kind of came up were, and I don't, it was the first time this really came up. It's like, well, how were the state courts working? What were they doing? You know, were they? It was just another dimension of looking at court as the Supreme Court as a convention or representative of the principles, and it's a complicated issue, and I think you guys handled it well. In addition to the other issues that were here, so thank you. It was very compelling presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I want
Thank
to
you.
concur with my colleagues that that again, it is always a testament to a good round when you want to continue on the conversation. And this has been a lot of fun talking with all three of you. And I really enjoyed kind of some of the strong opinions that you had and your willingness to defend them. I think that that going forward, people are going to want to gird their loins before conversing with you because you really come out fighting. At the same time, I sometimes think that you might have been better off having a little bit more nuance to the answers that you had. Sometimes they were so strong and so single-minded. The delegates did not follow their instructions at all. Treason and also with the idea that with the courts and did they is it a problem that they are not popularly represented? And the only answer I got was just this question as to whether or not Democrats and Republicans approve of the court or their opinions, and that's not really getting at the principle behind it. So, what I wanted a little bit more was to engage with the principled question of popular sovereignty and whether or not that's being undermined by the courts. So, although I think that you guys had a really strong way of defending yourself, I would have liked to explore different facets and different perspectives and points of views. And I think that would have added a little bit more texture. So there was great richness and strength in your presentation. But I also might have liked a little bit more texture and nuance. So that's my suggestion. Going forward into the world, you are some tough dames, and I do not envy anybody who's going to go up against you. But I have really enjoyed this conversation with you. So thank you so much.
Thank you.